We're very thankful for the ESPN folks being very hospitable. Now, there are some people actively trying to sabotage us from within ESPN.
Funny.
More specifically, I believe Norby Williamson is the guy who is attempting to sabotage our program.
And with that, Pat McAfee's tenure just got even more interesting, didn't it? The latest calling out an ESPN executive live on the air on ESPN. That being executive editor and head of event and studio production, Norby Williamson. What's rather important is the reaction from former ESPNers and the potential validity to these claims from McAfee.
I'm not 100% sure. That is just seemingly the only human that has information, and then somehow that information gets leaked and it's wrong. And then it sets a narrative of what our show is. And then are we just going to combat that from a rat every single time?
For the record, he also called veteran journalist Andrew Marchand a rat for reporting the payouts to Rodgers.
Somebody tried to get ahead of our actual ratings release with wrong numbers 12 hours beforehand. That's a sabotage attempt. And it's been happening basically this entire season from some people who didn't necessarily love the old edition of the Pat McAfee show to the ESPN family.
Sure.
There's a lot of those.
Stunningly, McAfee then shares a story of Williamson from 5 years ago.
Somebody that I don't like that guy. That guy left me in his office for 45 minutes, no-showed me in 2018. So this guy has had zero respect for me. And in return, same thing back to him for a long time. So even with that taking place and potential PR, we're still growing somehow.
Lots to get to. Let's dive in. Jamil Hill, a staple in media and ex-ESPN host, wrote about McAfee's diatribe. I can relate. Michelle Beadle, another veteran of the network, wrote below Hill's tweet, well, with a laughing emoji. So who is this dude? What is he about? Why the rift? McAfee is ticked because of a New York Post article implying his ratings are not as great as they should be, and they are practically implying it is Williamson doing all the leaking. Essentially, the piece, which was written by Marchand, noted the drop in viewership, with ESPN's First Take serving as McAfee's lead-in. The network is seeing a reported 48% drop. Now, when trying to gather some information on who this man is, we came across that he may not have the best relationship, plural, relationships, with some of the biggest on-air talent at the network. A Washington Post story from 2018 outlines Williamson's demands. NBA coach and analyst Dan Van Gundy, keep your hands folded. Longtime SportsCenter anchor Linda Cohn ceased from calling home runs master batters. The great Bob Lee, get rid of the beard. Williamson would tell the Post's Ben Strauss this quote, I told Bob he looks stupid, but his wife liked the beard, I guess. The point is that every little thing you do on air can distract from what you're saying. Now, in that same piece, here is the biggest claim of them all, in my opinion. There has been grumbling that Williamson wants to make SportsCenter great again, a nod to Trump's campaign slogan, with critics noting his past reluctance to change and his years ago resistance to Stuart Scott's famous booyah call. That's a flawed perspective, Williamson said. Stuart and I were close. Not a denial. Not a denial. So let me get this straight. There is an allegation. Norby Williamson cannot say that never happened. He says, we were close. He's a friend. Was a friend. So arguably ESPN's greatest anchor, making arguably the greatest highlight call on the greatest show the network has ever produced, and allegedly Norby Williamson tried to suppress it? I know they're trying to remake SportsCenter, and I'm all for it. I know that they want to get back to the good old days. Those are gone, man. Those are gone. And yet, here's where we are. With there being this imbalance, it appears, between Norby Williamson and on-air talent. Dan Patrick, another fixture who branched off and created the wildly successful Dan Patrick Show, may have had differing opinions with Williamson as well. The rumor mill also spun that Dan Le Batard may have had friction with Norby Williamson as well. In a write-up for Awful Announcing, Williamson joined the network in 1985, started in the mailroom, went to a PA spot, filled in on the production side, and then by 2002, he had risen to senior VP and managing editor at ESPN. He would lead the news department for 3 years, then oversee all of ESPN's domestic production. In 2012, it was on to negotiating rights fees with prospective partners. Williamson has held varying positions since, but he's basically been in charge of pretty much every facet of ESPN programming at one point or another. Here's how I see this. Disney CEO Bob Iger, when he returned, wanted Pat McAfee. He courted Pat McAfee. They're snapping pictures together. It seemed like this was his signing. Inside of this first point, there's two ways to think about this. And they both could be true. The first is Pat McAfee doesn't give a flying 4-letter word about Norby Williamson or any other Norbys that could be in the building. Because he just got $85 million. And the network needs him for a ratings boost, at least, more than McAfee needs a network. His stuff was already blowing up. Let's be very clear about this. Insanely popular. The second is Pat McAfee just doesn't care. Whether relationship with Bob Iger is withstanding, don't know. But this also seems pretty on brand, doesn't it? It seems like what ESPN kind of signed up for, if you ask me. The other point is this, and some wrongfully, I need to be very, very clear about this, wrongfully have said that the way I talk about McAfee is that I hate him. I don't hate him. I find his show to be fascinating. I think he is a fascinating figure. I think the, Danettes approach to his show is awesome. Everyone having a voice, cool. Do I have some issues with it? Yeah. Do I have issues with mainly the air that he allows Rodgers, the lack of follow-ups, the lack of fact-checking, the ability to just spout ridiculous conspiracy theories? Yeah. Does that mean I hate him? No. 100% no. I think Pat McAfee is putting on a Band-Aid to a broken bone with ESPN. The ratings are the biggest issue because people aren't watching as much anymore. That's the brutal honesty. As I see it, they are putting McAfee on. His YouTube stuff is off the charts. Haven't checked out his Facebook. His TikTok live streams off the charts. And the viewership totals are pretty good considering that less people are watching and there's just more of a marketplace of competition in sports media where people can get podcasts, they can watch live streams on TikTok, they could watch short form on TikTok or YouTube Shorts, they could watch long form on YouTube, they could watch on Facebook, they could watch on Snapchat. I mean, there's so much competition out there. So at the end of the day, they are not going to let Pat McAfee go. They're just not. McAfee has a reputation for not finishing deals. I think the onus falls on him more than it does the network. And at this point, potentially, he might push it and get your popcorn ready because that could be really interesting.